Hi, welcome to Reflections on A Course in Miracles. I'm Stephanie Panay, and today I'd like to talk about faith and worry from the perspective of A Course in Miracles. Now, have you ever had somebody say to you, I'm worried about you, so and so? Have you ever said that to somebody else? I'm worried about you. In contrast, have you ever had someone say to you, I've got faith in you? And have you ever said that to somebody else, that you have faith in them? And notice, what did it feel like to have someone say, I'm worried about you? And in contrast, what did it feel like to have someone say, I've got faith in you? These are not small issues because the two different ways of perceiving someone as whether you are worried about them or whether you have faith in them relate to two perspectives, to an ego perspective and to a right-minded perspective. And this is what I'd like to flush out in this video. So as an illustration, uh, yesterday I watched a video of Stevie Nicks, the wonderful musical performer who used to be a lead singer in Fleetwood Mac. That's just for all of you Gen Z perhaps who may not know who Stevie Nicks is, but I bet you do anyway. She's a music legend. So in this video, she was doing a concert and she was talking about how she came to write her song called Stand Back. And basically, the gist was that it was related to a Prince song that she heard on the radio called Little Red Corvette. And the melody in Little Red Corvette is what really set Stevie off thinking about lyrics and music for her song Stand Back, which is a great song. Anyway, having written her song Stand Back, she thought she better get in contact with Prince to ask for his permission to use the kind of melody she did and to be upfront about what inspired it. And he gave permission. He thought the song was great when he heard it. And this started a friendship between them. And she said they were close friends, and very often during that time in her life, Prince would say that he was worried about her. And in the concert, she said, but that's fair enough. There was a lot going on in my life at the time that would get people worried about me. Now, I think the irony is that Stevie, at the time, she's been upfront with her drug use and her drug addiction during that period of her life. And, she's still going strong now and she's recovered. And she's going strong. Prince, unfortunately, in that horrible year 2016, he, along with George Michael, David Bowie, passed away. Prince passed away at the age of 57 from what the police believe was an accidental drug overdose because of a faulty medication that he was taking. So Prince dying of a drug overdose at age 57, after saying he was worried about Stevie Nicks and her drug use all those years ago, and here she is still going strong. There's this irony there. And that's the thing with the world of form, on perceptions based on form. You'll often find there's irony in the way things turn out. The thing about saying to someone, I'm worried about you, is that it is always based on form, based on what's going on in their life, based on our judgments of what is good and what is bad. And yes, we can see someone going off the rails. But like the Course says in its true empathy section, when we say, I'm worried about you, and come from that, there's a couple of things going on. One is we're identifying with the person's weakness, with their ego. We're making judgments on form. And it also says that we know what's best for them. We don't. But we make distinctions when we base things on the world and appearances about what will lead to pain and suffering. If someone has a wonderful career and things are going great on the outside, we don't think, oh, that's going to lead to pain and suffering. Why do we make such a distinction and say that's not a helpful path, but that one is? How do we know? How do we know that amazing success, career-wise, and the house, the picket fence, the family, the clean living? How do we know that that is serving that person in terms of letting go of their ego? So I'd like to read out a sentence from the True Empathy section, and where it says empathy, I'll replace it with the word worry. Okay. So this is the first sentence from paragraph 2 in the True Empathy section. The clearest proof that empathy, so here I'll say worry, as the ego uses it, is destructive, lies in the fact that it is applied only to certain types of problems and in certain people. So certain types of problems will be talking about what's based on form, and certain types of people, we're looking at the differences in form between people. So in, the thing about egos is that ego always judges by appearances. So it will say this form is a call for help, this form isn't. We're always making distinctions about what is going to lead to wreck and ruin in terms of peace and happiness, and what isn't. We don't know. And it's just so tempting in terms of the world to say, yeah, I know that person's on a bad track because these are all the indicators, the worldly indicators. And that person over there, they're on a good track because these are all the worldly indicators. In terms of someone's atonement path and practice of forgiveness and letting go of their ego, we don't know. We can't judge. So in contrast to worry about someone is the idea of trust or faith. And this brings up the lesson 166, I am entrusted with the gifts of God. In lesson 166, it says the following: every mind that looks upon the world and judges it as certain, solid, trustworthy, and true believes in two creators, or in one, himself alone, but never in one God. So what it means by seeing the world as trustworthy is seeing that the world of form and what we perceive is reality. So if I see somebody like Prince seeing Stevie doing all the drug taking and everything, and then being worried about her because he sees a body doing things that are destructive to a body and worries about her. By worrying, he's saying, what I perceive is real. It's making the error real, and it's saying she is a body, and that is all he's seeing about her, doing harmful things to a body. The disempowering nature of saying to someone, I'm worried about you, is expressed well, I think, by Michael J. Fox, the actor who has Parkinson's disease. And he said the following in a report printed in the Standard newspaper. Fox said, because of all the things I've done, nobody pities me. And that's great. I couldn't stand it. Pity is just another form of abuse. That's a really potent line, and I think it expresses well the disempowering nature of someone saying, I'm worried about you. It's like they've identified this big flaw in you, your life, and that's what they're saying. That's what's uppermost in their mind, your weakness as they perceive it. So therefore, by saying to someone, I'm worried about you, that's actually a form of attack. It's akin to what the Course calls forgiveness to destroy. That's where the world's type of forgiveness, it says, yes, you have done something bad, you have done something that can disturb my peace. it has affected me, but I'll be the bigger person and I'll say, you have done something bad, but I'll overlook it. Well, I call this kind of worry to destroy. It says, yes, you're doing something that's harmful to your body and you should be afraid. I'm afraid for you. You should be afraid for you. And that's not helpful. It's not helpful because it's affirming that you're a body, it's affirming that they're a body, and it's affirming that the world is trustworthy because it's saying that the world is real, the world is true, and that there is nothing beyond this world of form. There's nothing beyond my body, there's nothing beyond your body. But what faith is in the Course in Miracles, when it talks about having faith in your brother, it's saying have faith in the fact that your brother is not a body and that you are not a body. And so that faith comes from remembering that no matter what is going on in form, you know that ultimately they're okay, you're okay, because that unified self is untouchable, that unified self is okay. And so if you can offer in your mind, it only needs to be in your mind, but it can come out if spontaneously you say to someone, I have faith in you. I have faith in you to go forward. Well, that's what you're saying. I have faith in you that you have a right mind. I have faith in you that you can exercise the power of your mind's ability to choose the right mind. That's what you're saying in your mind. Then whatever you say in form will be helpful, or maybe you won't say anything in form. And maybe, is it possible that you would say, I'm worried about you? I don't know. I don't know. But if you do, it won't come from a feeling of worry. So, you know what? I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that. Lesson 181 in the course, called I Trust My Brothers Who Are One With Me, provides a great summary of what we've just been talking about, of the necessity to see beyond somebody's body, beyond their ego, beyond their limitations, to their right mind, to remember that, because in remembering that for them, we're also remembering that for ourselves. In the lesson, I'll read just the first two paragraphs. Wherever I say attack, can think of worry, and wherever I say sins, you can think of somebody's limitations, the limitations of their body. So here are the first two paragraphs. Trusting your brothers is essential to establishing and holding up your faith in your ability to transcend doubt and lack of sure conviction in yourself. When you attack a brother, you proclaim that he is limited by what you have perceived in him. You do not look beyond his errors. Rather, they are magnified, becoming blocks to your awareness of the self, capital S, that lies beyond your own mistakes and past his seeming sins as well as yours. Perception has a focus. It is this that gives consistency to what you see. Change but this focus, and what you behold will change accordingly. Your vision now will shift to give support to the intent which has replaced the one you held before. So now you intend to look through the eyes of vision rather than the ego's eyes that speak of limitation, vulnerability, danger, all of that. Remove your focus on your brother's sins and you experience the peace that comes from faith in sinlessness. This faith receives its only sure support from what you see in others past their sins. For their mistakes, if focused on, are witnesses to sins in you, and you will not transcend their sight and see the sinlessness that lies beyond. I think that's a really great summary of what we've been talking about. So let's go back to the title of that lesson 166. I am entrusted with the gifts of God. We're entrusted with nothing less than the gifts of God. God has faith in us because God knows who we are. Now that's an immense, how could you be trusted with anything more than the gifts of God. That's a huge amount of trust, a huge amount of faith, because God knows who we are. And the gifts of God are peace, happiness, a knowledge that you're safe, a continuous sense of security. These are all the things that are part of our inheritance. And here I'd like to bring up 2 tarot cards, the illustrations of which I think are really helpful. Here we go. I've used this one before in another video. Actually, this lesson 166, I am entrusted with the gifts of God, is what this tarot card really symbolizes, a part in it where it says you walk or feel like you're walking on with threadbare clothes and looking down at the ground and bereft when you don't realize that God's gifts go with you. You can't see them. And you can't see them because you're identified with the body. I'll come back to these cards. You're identified with the body. And so you see what another person does and worry about them. But while you're worrying about them, because of what their body is doing and your judgments about what's good and bad, you're also worrying about yourself. You're identifying yourself as a body and seeing yourself as vulnerable and that you could make mistakes in the world and do this and do that. And so you're keeping the gifts of God away from yourself and by the other person by not having faith that they are more than they're a body. It's the same as yourself. You're not remembering that you are more than a body and that you are entitled and deserve to be entrusted with the gifts of God. That's huge. That's a huge difference to a self-concept like this, where you feel like you haven't been entrusted with anything. You certainly haven't been entrusted with anything worthwhile or of value. In contrast, this card speaks of inheritance. You have, let's say, a father here growing old. He's got some loyal dogs here. He's in lush surroundings. It looks like a castle. And there's, let's say, he's grown children who will be inheriting the stability, the security of all that he has. And he trusts them to leave it to them. So these are all worldly symbols, but of what God, the situation is between God and us. We are cared for. We do have a wonderful inheritance. All that we will ever need is with us now. But we won't, and we have been entrusted with the gifts of God, with our inheritance. But we won't know it if we focus on form. So the next time we find ourselves worrying about what somebody's doing in the world, we can remember that worrying about them is not helpful. It's not helpful to them and it's not helpful to us. And it deprives us of experiencing the gifts of God. It also deprives them, or you miss out on the opportunity to experience the gifts of God by not sharing them with other people, because that's another facet to the course, is the idea that we become aware of what we've received from God by offering it to other people. So the way you know to know you have something is to extend it to other people, to let the love go through you, and that's how you know the love is in you. To conclude, I'll read some extracts from the last few paragraphs of lesson 166. And these paragraphs emphasize the fact that the gifts of God that have been entrusted to us are entrusted to us not just for ourselves, but to share with everyone we meet. And that means sharing the peace within our mind with everyone that we meet. So from paragraph 12, sentence 3, the gifts you have are not for you alone. What he has come to offer you, you now must learn to give. A bit later on, The gifts are yours, entrusted to your care to give to all who chose the lonely road you have escaped. They do not understand, they but pursue their wishes. It is you who teach them now, for you have learned of Christ there is another way for them to walk. Teach them by showing them the happiness that comes to those who feel the touch of Christ and recognize God's gifts. Let sorrow not tempt you to be unfaithful to your trust. So I'm going to reread that last sentence and replace the word sorrow with worry. And I'll do that with a few other words as we continue on. So that last sentence again. Let worry not tempt you to be unfaithful to your trust. Your worry will now betray the hopes of those who look to you for their release. Your tears are theirs. If you are worried, you but withhold their healing. What you fear but teaches them fears are justified. Your hand becomes the giver of Christ's touch. Your change of mind becomes the proof that who accepts God's gifts can never suffer anything. You are entrusted with the world's release from pain. So that's a big amount of trust, not just in giving us the gifts of God, but in giving those gifts of God, sharing them with others. So we do that by asking for help whenever we find ourselves worried or judging what goes on in the world as something very dangerous to bodies. Yes, the world is dangerous, but we need to ask for help to see beyond the body, beyond the world, to remember who we are and who the other person is. And that will be reflected in an experience of peace. And when we have that experience, we're mirroring that to somebody else so they can be reminded of the choice that they can make in their mind to accept that same peace. And that is the biggest help to them. That will be the biggest guide to them in what they do, not you saying, I'm worried about you. Well, I hope this has been helpful to you and tune in again. Thank you.